Christine Marie, and I am very tired. I've been driving since 8:30 this morning, and I got into Boston late last night. I flew in at 12:31, and then I got to my hotel after picking up my car, and I was there at 2:30. So it's been a long day driving from Boston to Prince Edward Island, but here I am in this little summer cottage that my sister purchased a couple years ago, and she's in the process of selling it. So I'm actually going to gather some investors around the island and folks who own businesses and have a knowing dinner here and kind of get the feel of what the market's like, and see if I can get some buyers for her. So I'm here to do that. I'm also here to write the Craft and Calling book, which I'm super excited for. There's a couple of reasons why I'm focusing on that right now while my Knowing book is being edited, and we'll be able to get that out the door in early 2026. But I want to write Craft and Calling for honestly, I'd like to be a published author by the time Knowing comes out. But even more than that, I have been having these amazing conversations with different individuals on the Craft and Calling podcast, and it has been the conversations have been so incredibly helpful for what most tradespeople are struggling with right now. And I feel a sense of urgency to get this book out for the initial reason that I shared, but also because, man, I can wait and wait and wait until it's the perfect environment, wait until it's the perfect completed book. And I'm excited to honestly get this one out the door pretty soon. So I'm here nestled down for 2 weeks. I'm actually going to be translating some of the podcast conversations into book chapters, which I'm super excited about. And so the individuals who participate in the book will be co-authors and also be serving as founding members of the Knowing community, which is coming out, the Craft and Calling community, which is coming out in early 2026. So there's a lot in the works right now. A lot of my people are at Growth Hacking Live, and they're all flying in right now to San Diego, and I'm just, I feel my heart with them. But y'all, I'm in this season of just a stillness of sorts. I feel really called to actually kind of put my head down and actually kind of put boundaries around myself. And there's this verse in scripture that has always been one of my favorites. Psalm 16 verse 11, and it says, the boundary lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. Indeed, I have a beautiful inheritance. And that verse has always, it's held so much meaning for me because as the boundary lines in my life have adjusted so drastically from getting married at 20 years old and then being divorced at 28 and just having my entire life fall apart, it's like, how can that be true? The boundary lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. You know, there's so much from just that one simple line that we can kind of pull forward. And so when we think about what does it look like to intentionally put boundary lines around us so that we are then able to live with intention and actually thus have a beautiful place in which to exist, we can be in the depths of sorrow, yet create a beautiful place in which to exist and do the work. And so that, it's so funny. I haven't thought about it until now, but effectively that's what the Knowing arena is this, the manifestation, the physical manifestation of this, the physical manifestation, and even kind of the emotional, existential manifestation, you know, the figurative manifestation of that verse. We get to create our own boundary lines in order to ensure that we live a life that we're proud of, to ensure that we live a life in alignment with our ideal. Yesterday, we dove into what does it look like to ensure that our inner being is vertically aligned, and also our external doing. So we're human beings, not human doers, but we need to ensure that our external doing is also in alignment. And so then the question is, do I have an alignment and an ideal for each category, each way of being, my inner being and my external being? And so we talked about that yesterday. And then the kind of manner in which we do that is to effectively create those boundary lines in which we exist to ensure that we move into and walk in alignment with our ideal. And so today I want to dive into something. I have been, in this season of just quiet. I was in a season of that earlier this year when I went to Italy and France for about 6 to 8 weeks. And it was so interesting because that time was so lonely, and it was exactly what I needed. And I knew I needed that. I knew that that was exactly and precisely what was necessary for this season of my life. Yet the boundary lines and existing within that space, existing within that arena that we self-impose does not mean it's easy. And even right now, knowing that everyone is in San Diego, I'm like, oh gosh, I wish I was there. But I know that I've got my work cut out for me. And it's not just on the doing side. There's elements of my inner being where I find a strengthening, a continuous dismantling of, removing that which should no longer remain so that we can thus create something new. These boundary lines and these intentional times of going into the arena ultimately ensure that we can maintain the forward progression and forward momentum. And that is where growth always lies. Over the last couple of months, like ever since I've come home from Italy, I feel like I've just kind of been playing catch up. I feel like I've almost been in this like brain fog, and that brain fog can come from multitude of reasons. And honestly, for me, there's been some things that I've really had to work through on a relational aspect. Relationship has really been a theme over the last 12 months where, I really had kind of gotten my vertical alignment down. And then it's like, okay, well, how do I coexist with other people? How do I coexist with my family? How do I coexist in romantic relationship for the first time, in 4 years? What does that look like? How do I exist in this place? What does boundary lines look like in that regard? And so I've been taking more intentional time from existing with everyone around me to retreat and go inward and ensure that then the external manner in which I show up is truly in alignment with my inner ideal for my being, my inner being. And then also my external doing is in alignment. Because y'all, what I have found time and time again, and I hate this, but it's the truth. I will have my vertical alignment. I'll feel so like my inner being is strong and secure and good. And then I walk out into the world, and then something externally happens on the horizontal lateral level, and it immediately moves me out of alignment. And I'm like, well, how strong was I to begin with if I'm that easily faltered? And so I've really, really been leaning into this concept, which actually we're going to be talking about today, which is forgiveness. And it's something that actually has a lot of ties to truth. And this time is really dedicated to real-time processing. I was journaling on it a little bit, journaling as I was driving. I was talking into my phone and just processing, knowing that I wanted to talk about this tonight. But there's even deeper processing that I know that we'll get into, because I just had a realization as I'm talking to you. Ever since going to Italy and France in April and May, I really was diving into what is true. What is true on a horizontal level, because I focused so much of my time after everything dissolved with my marriage to go inward and say, okay, what did I do wrong? But in only focusing on my internal experience and not at all sitting with, okay, well, what kind of objectively happened? Like, what did they do? What did they contribute to the picture? And the reason why I'm talking about truth is because we can't forgive that which we do not know. And we cannot forgive that which we have not identified and shed a light on. We cannot forgive that which is in the dark. And so in truth, coming in and illuminating, flipping on the light switch and seeing the full picture of what is and the full picture of reality, it's actually kind of terrifying, because we don't know what we're going to find. We don't know if there's actually going to be skeletons hidden in the closet, and we didn't even realize it was as painful as we thought it was because we had suppressed it for so long. There's a reason why we suppress things and why we don't actually give voice to them, why we don't flip on the light switch in relationship or otherwise. And so over the last couple of months, I've been gingerly turning on the light switches in different relationship categories. And then it's like, okay, what do I do with this? What do I do with the truth that I'm seeing? And it was so interesting. Oh gosh, it was so interesting. I was listening to this morning. So today is Sunday, and we talk about spiritual intelligence here on Sundays. the rest of the week we dedicate to the other intelligences: artificial intelligence, intellectual intelligence, emotional intelligence. But today is really about the SQ, the spiritual intelligence. And y'all, it's something that I had cultivated so much I had cultivated a relational, well, I had read the Bible and I had gone to church and I had absorbed all of the horizontal external perceptions around who God was. And I also had gone and done kind of individual prayer and pursuit of God. But I never really had known what God sounded like or had a real connection. Like I was constantly in pursuit of him, but there were a few times where I did feel something and experience something, but it was kind of rare. And so much of my life had been this almost like grasping for something, that which was above and beyond and outside of me. And over the last, 2023 New Year's Eve, I had this, and I wasn't planning to talk about this, but we'll go with it. I learned to hear God's voice for the first time, and it has radically changed my life. And it's something that I don't talk. I don't think I've ever publicly said that because it's so deeply personal to me, and it matters so much. And it's like someone said this the other day. It's like to try to describe an encounter, an experience, a relationship with the divine, with God himself. It's like I can draw a painting and say this is what it's like, and it's merely this physical representation of something spiritual. You cannot ever fully and accurately and with the beauty and like joy and peace of what it is to encounter something on a spiritual level. So honestly, for the lack of words and lack of even honor and reverence for what I experience with him, it's like, let me just not even touch it. I just don't even want to go there. And this is so funny, even as I'm saying it, I tend to do that actually also in conflict moments in relationships. I don't even want to touch it. I don't know what I'm going to find. I can't control the outcome. And control has really been at the root of me not wanting to flip on the light switch of truth, whether it's in physical relationships, or even my relationship with God. It's like something so precious and intimate to me that I don't actually want others to really know about it, because I don't know what they're going to do. I just don't know what will happen. And so this is something that I've kind of like kept very secret and private because it's so precious to me. And I have, in order to maintain true to who I am, in moments of intimacy, I will talk about it. And even before the Knowing Show, I actually will pray with every guest before we go live. And I just tell them, I'm like, hey, I'm going to do something for me. You're more than welcome to listen, engage, enter in. But I need to do this. This is something that I do for me, and you're welcome to join. And I just pray for us to have an amazing conversation. I pray for you. I pray for me. I pray for them. I just ask for the presence of God, because I've experienced that, and it has completely altered my life, and I'm so grateful for it. And it's really, truly powerful. And so when we talk, it's so freaking cool. Even just as I said, it's so powerful. I was at Joe Dispenza's event in August, and he's talking about effectively us being able to access the quantum field and being able to go outside of time and capitalize on what our true potential is, and the full prowess of our being. And so when you think about that, that's powerful. But then when you think about, okay, if we actually have access to something and someone infinitely greater than us, now I'm doubly powerful. I've got the eternal God and my eternal self. And those two in concert are powerful. Yet what I had done for so much of my life, I had only been fixating on, okay, the internal God, the internal God, but he was external. He was something outside of me. And I never realized that actually, truly he was in me. And therefore I had this ability to rise up and like be powerful in and of myself. So that's like category number one. That's 50% of the picture is Christ in all of us. And a lot of religions believe this. It's not just Christianity. It's God is in you and me, and he is in all. And therefore, we are all one and connected. Okay. So then I've been like, okay, so if we're all one, what makes us unique? What makes us distinct? Because a lot of, I believe it's Buddhists will be like, well, we're all effectively the same in Zen, and let's all just be happy and kind of kumbaya. That's what I've heard. I don't want to dumb it down to that level. That's been my experience talking with different Buddhists, is that there's this very peaceful Zen uh, kind of approach to life, and we're all one, and we're all very connected. But with this whole other element of you and I are both uniquely crafted, made with this prowess and with this purpose to our life, and we have this eternal potential in the quantum of what's possible. What does it look like to activate that while also activating Christ in us? And then there we have this holistic, functional human, each one that is connected, yes, but also uniquely, divinely separate. It is so cool when we really think about this, because then, one, every single day is a miracle, because I am an eternal soul, divine, and I have a mission. Never again can I feel bored. Never again can I feel without purpose, without reason, without calling, without potential and potency in this world. I am here for a reason. And this is so exciting. So that's part number one. But part number two is, okay, if we're connected, that means that anything other than love needs to go, because it's going to fundamentally break that bond and that connection between each other. And that's why, man, that's why we feel so broken when we're alone and in isolation. That's why we feel that desperate need for community, because we are meant to commune. We are meant to be with others. Even this whole concept of God is above and without, rather than God is within, that in and of itself is community, is that I am never alone. And how much more with a physical being, with a physical person. So we are made for community, yet if we are driven by what happens when we exist with the lights turned off, when we're not acknowledging the truth, and acknowledging the truth in every single area of our core intelligences. So that's the intellectual intelligence, emotional intelligence, spiritual, physical intelligence. If we're not fully aware and awake and conscious of what the truth is, to how we are feeling, thinking, moving, doing, then we're not going to ensure that our being is able to then live in the fullness of the truth, and thus be powered by love, because fear exists in the darkness, and that's when the light of truth is turned off. So where there is darkness, there is fear, and thus there is disconnection, and we are never going to be able to engage in the type of love propelled connection that we were uniquely and divinely created for. And so when we think about what happens then when we turn on the light of truth, I had this kind of, I had this realization this morning, and it just blew my mind, because I was listening to, there's a lot of churches I don't like, and I stopped going to church when my brother-in-law was killed. Honestly, it was like I was so broken, and I walked into churches, and it was the last place I wanted to be. It just felt like no one, so funny, I feel it even now, just that sense of like no one really knows what it's like to be broken. Here's everyone looking perfect, talking perfect. It's like, what's the hardest thing in your life? Oh, I have pride. And you're like, okay, my life's falling apart. Like, I can't relate with you. And it's just so, it was honestly, I walked up and left out of multiple services, because I just could not, it felt incongruent to sit and listen to someone who was speaking out something that they didn't know. And y'all, that's how I lived for so much of my life. I had the head knowledge and a heart disparity. I hadn't actually experienced the power of God. I hadn't actually experienced. Yesterday I talked about a woman giving birth to new life. That's how we're supposed to be living when we come to know. Thus we can then change and allow for something new to come forth, but death has to occur. And so much of the time I was walking around church and I didn't know, I didn't have the language for it then, but as I'm doing my own work and my own transformation and coming alive and allowing for death, I'm like, oh, that's what that meant. When in the Bible, it talks about you need to be reborn, you need to be born again. Jesus talks about that, yet none of the Christians who espouse that live like it. And so then we're all like, there's this disconnection that why am I seeing all these dead people calling themselves Christ followers, yet Christ is not activated in you? That doesn't mean Christ isn't in you, but it means you haven't activated it. It's like, again, turning on the light switch of truth, pressing the button to activate Christ. So then it's this disconnection and this disparity. I've been seeing so much, oh gosh, so much anger around the church over the last week and a half or week really, since Charlie Kirk's death. And it's just, I've been seeing it from my own family. There's people in my family who grew up so Christian, so conservative, so with like a noose around their neck, lest you misstep and be damned to hell. And it was just so fear-based. There wasn't, even Chill's saying that, there wasn't the love that breeds freedom. Truth breeds freedom, love breeds freedom, and fear causes death. It's the entanglement. And so, in one sense, it's like, okay, if we are going to walk in the light of truth, if we're going to walk in the light that love brings, what about those old spiritual beliefs need to go so that new beliefs can arise, thus the new rebirth, and subsequently allow for new behaviors? So it really is, what are the old beliefs that need to die? Obviously, the behaviors then die there too. Then in that process of death is the rebirth for the new belief and thus the new behavior. And y'all, it just, man, it changes everything. It changes everything. It's like hope is born, and connection is born too. And so this morning I was listening to a message from a church. There's one church that I found that I do like, and they're in Portland, Oregon, and they talk a lot about emotionally healthy spirituality. And I read a book about that years ago, and actually it kind of catalyzed my initial journey into emotional intelligence. And I had forgotten about that. I thought Daring Greatly was the book that really did it for me, but it was really this book, and it was under the confines of like how there are so many Christians and religious people just in general who are so disassociated from their body, from their emotions, from their mind, from themselves. Like they're living in this like in this spiritual place that is out of touch with reality. So then what that means is that they are all good and wholesome here in this unreality. And then when they come into reality, their entire behavior changes because their belief doesn't transcend down into what is really going on in the world around us. And so then we wonder why we're like, wait, but you were one person here and now you're another person here. There's incongruence. Who really are you? And really it's because we're not actually allowing for, that's why the intelligence piece is really hard. Just being religious and just being spiritual in pursuit doesn't actually mean that we're intelligent as to that which we're pursuing. Feeling our emotions and having big emotional reactions does not mean that we're intelligent to them. Just like going to school doesn't mean that we're actually intellectually intelligent. There's something about this whole concept of knowing is that it perpetuates change. If you really know something, you can't help but take different action and take action in accordance with it. So really, man, when it comes to this message that I was listening to, it really hit me because I've been in this place where I've had this kind of emotional brain fog where there's been so much happening, and there's been a lot of pain around relationships lately as I've been flipping on the light switch of truth. And then it's, okay, well, what do I do with this? What do I do with the truth that I find? And isn't justice kind of like the natural response to truth? Because if I'm not pursuing justice, am I honoring the truth in the first place? And so the message today was on forgiveness, and I just felt compelled to listen to it. I honestly haven't listened to the church in a while, and so I was really leaning in, and Sorry, I chuckle because right when I said I was really leaning in, it just felt inauthentic, so I just wanted to backtrack and say that. Sorry. Um, I'm just gonna get centered again for a second. I distracted myself and then I came out of alignment and now I'm getting back into it. I was listening to the message and the gentleman said something about forgiveness that really, really resonated. He said, if we're not able to extend forgiveness to someone else, that likely means we are not extending it to ourselves. And that likely means we're actually not able to thus receive it, whether it's receiving it from God or receiving it from ourselves, receiving it from even the person that originated that wound to begin with. Because so often the wound, thus the need to forgive that is occurring in the present, has roots to the past. So we have improper attribution if we're looking at the person in the present and saying you're wrong, when yes, perhaps they really are, but really the proper attribution is to go back to the source. And as I was thinking about this, I just had this visual in my mind of, love is like a flowing river. There's fluidity, it's rushing, there's movement there. But usually when we have the lack of love and thus ability to forgive someone here in the present moment, if we trace back kind of like that water, that river line, we see that it's dry, like there's no love and forgiveness to give. And then we trace it back for attribution to the source in the past. We see that there's effectively a dam that's built, preventing the flow of love and forgiveness into the present moment because of the lack of forgiveness in the past. And it's not even just the lack of forgiveness, it's that fundamentally the fact that we did not process that originating painful moment brick by brick, slab by slab, this dam built, preventing a future love and forgiveness because we didn't deal with the past wound in and of itself. So we're fundamentally withholding the source of love and forgiveness that is necessary in the present moment because it's tied up in the past, because we are unable to allow for the dam to break and thus experience that love and forgiveness today. And so what was so important for me in that moment was that it was kind of like, okay, justice actually has to be served in some ways to honor the truth, because otherwise it's like, well, what's even the point of knowing the truth if there's not going to be any justice? And so this is where, oh gosh, this is where this is what I actually am really leaning into. That is the proper word for it. I really am leaning into this whole concept of uh, what's it called? Well, it's atonement. What's it called? Substitutionary atonement, but it starts with a P. But forgiveness of sins. Did Christ come and die for the forgiveness of sins? And a lot of, actually, some people really close to me believe it's more figurative. And I've been open and thinking about it, and I'm like, okay, frankly, the story still stands, whether it was literal or figurative. And so as I've been with that whole concept though of justice, it was interesting because with what the pastor said today, that it resonated. Can I entrust justice to God while joining with him in forgiveness? So it's effectively me taking the need for justice and entrusting it to him. And then almost like in me handing over the need for justice, I can take his hand with him and then give love and forgiveness. And that's not all the time, but it was really, really helpful because I've realized that in some close relationships over the last, well, even just 24 hours, yesterday I was boarding my flight to Boston and I could not stop crying. Like there was just so clearly, I was processing the panels and the bricks that were withholding the dam from breaking loose for love and forgiveness to flow into a particular relationship. And I was just really leaning in. I'm like, but what about this moment? What about this moment? Like, all these times that have just been so painful. What do I do with this? And I felt like I was standing there like holding these bricks, these panels that had built the dam. And I'm like, but look, I can't just let love and forgiveness flow, because what do I do with this? And it was almost just like this picture of like, oh, but I can actually entrust it to God. And then I can really trust his heart and trust his ability. That's where, justice was served in God's decision to forgive us. And so if I really do believe that there has been forgiveness from an eternal God toward me, and I know again, people don't believe that, but that's a really, really powerful thing. And therein lies freedom. When I can let go of this is the weight of what I'm holding, of that anger and the desire for justice, that is my weight. The other person is going on their merry way. When I'm holding on to the bricks and panels, that is literally fundamentally holding me down. And what's interesting too, it's also holding me in place. So that dam that's been built in the past, that's preventing the love and forgiveness to flow today into the present, my body, my emotions, my mind is still hung up in the past. And therefore I fundamentally can't move into the future because I'm so tied to the past, and therefore I am not free. So if we desire forgiveness, if we desire the ability to move forward, we have to break free from the chains of the past and even the chains of justice. That does not mean that there's not ever a proper time for justice, but it's almost like getting the spiritual freedom. And yes, maybe there are physical ramifications, a physical manifestation of justice that we can execute. Suing somebody is a great example. Maybe we literally need to go sue someone. Maybe we actually need to go, well, I won't give that example. Y'all, with forgiveness, I have a lot to learn still. But it was so important for me to recognize this morning that in my subconscious, but in going into the arena, I realized that I subconsciously had equated truth as like the antithesis of love. And that is massive. No wonder I struggled with codependency for so long. It was like, oh, if I'm going to love you, then I'm going to ignore everything you've done. But recognizing the truth does not mean that justice is not ever served. It also means that truth and love can coexist, because either I'm entrusting, maybe forever I'm entrusting justice to the divine and entrusting his heart for me and joining with him in forgiveness. Yet also there's so much power in the physical change, and that this is why all intelligences being activated together is so critically important, because my decision on an emotional level to let go of the past does not mean that there are not physical boundaries that I set up in the way that I communicate with that person moving forward. And when we look at our intelligences in isolation, that's where our nervous system can kick into high gear, and our 4Fs, the freeze, fight, fawn, or flight, will kick in and say, wait a second, you're about to go back into danger, and you're going to repeat the wounds of the past, and you're going to end up having the same experience all over again. But if we have all four of these intelligences like come into the boardroom together, we can hear from each one, and then we can make a decision predicated in wisdom. But we are not having resentment and just like this need for vengeance coming in and flooding our cognitive ability to even see clearly in the first place. And love and forgiveness are what are powering us forward, not fear. Because ultimately, if fear is existing in the darkness and we're making decisions in fear, we're making decisions in the dark. And we cannot fundamentally see from a larger perspective and ensure that we're living in alignment with our ideal. Our the picture of the vertical alignment is, operating under the hierarchy of our ideal that is and in under subservience to the divine. But there's something where it really does transcend the physical dimension. It actually does transcend time in and of itself. It is not tied and tethered to the past or the future or even the present moment, but it almost allows for like this ability to see beyond that which is in the human limited perspective, because with Christ in us, therefore we have this eternal divine perspective. And I have a lot to learn when it comes to the quantum. I felt like I was in boot camp with Joe Dispenza that first week of August, but I have felt that and experienced almost like this taste of, oh my gosh, there's so much more in me that I've tapped into. And there is this ability in meditation and getting our bodies into such a calm meditative state and coming into this ability to almost get into that dreamlike state, yet being awake and allowing for that coherence of our brain and our heart. It allows for us to be able to vision something new, something different. That's where creation lies, is in the unknown, in the present moment. Because otherwise, if we're tethered to the past while trying to live in the present, we will never be able to change our behaviors. We will never be able to change and have something new in the future. We'll just continually self perpetuate all these old programs that we're trying so desperately to be free from. And we wonder why we can't love. We wonder why we can't be free. It's because we haven't dealt with what's back there. And it's damming up the ability for love to flow into the present moment, for forgiveness to flow and cover over what happened in the past. But we have to go back to the past to let go of it. We have to go back to the past and actually take up those bricks and those panels, break the dam down and say, okay, I actually am going to, with intention, let go of this and hand it over to someone who is far better than me, both intent and in character, and trust them to be a good shepherd of my soul. And I also come with him in being a shepherd and caretaker of my soul. Because y'all, that's something that I saw so many times was folks in a religious context kind of like blaming God, like using God as a shield for the decisions that they made that were so damaging, so painful. And there was a lack of accountability and frankly, a lack of reciprocity. And so then when we saw this them living in this kind of like non-reality spirit state in church, let's say, and then coming and engaging in their real lives, there was just such a big difference and it makes us feel crazy. So when each intelligence is coming to the table and being active participants and being effectively like board advisors to ourselves and to our then ability to then make an informed decision, it serves as a guard and it serves as a protection to ensure that we don't self-perpetuate and get ourselves back into a harmful state that we once knew. Each one of our intelligences is so useful. We have to cultivate every single one because we're going to be able to get revelations from the divine. We're going to get revelations from the past that have something to say to us. And we're really going to be able to create something brand new, totally unique, and in alignment with why we're here in the first place. I have 21 days of vertical alignments that I would love to give you. It's just go to verticalalignment.com. 21 days of effectively that kind of time that I take every morning to align my mind, body, soul, spirit. And I have a prompt every day as well. It just helps us go deeper, my work that I've done, yes, some of it started in therapy, but so much of our own growth, we can self perpetuate by going into the arena by our own regard, by our own willingness to do so, rather than tragedy picking us up and dropping us off at the gates. And we're like, oh, crap. Like, I haven't prepared for this. I haven't worked out. I haven't been readied for this fight that honestly feels like it's to the death when we do experience loss to the extreme that my sister did when her husband was killed, to the extent that I did when my husband left by his own demise. Y'all, we have to put in the reps. We have to prepare for the day of the battle so that when it comes, and it will come, I've seen it for most every person I know. And then we'll have a fighting chance to allow for the death of the old self and thus allow for our new self to come forth. I really appreciate you joining tonight, and I will talk to you tomorrow.